All right, it's 7 o'clock. So welcome to the Blue Goba and Microdosing Guru Microdosing Essentials event. This event is going to be centered around the practice of microdosing. We're going to cover a whole range of topics on how you can optimize a microdose, what the ideal dosage is, microdosing with different psychedelic substances, and we will have a Q&A session where you can ask either myself, Jeff, or Anna from Microdosing Guru any question that you may have about microdosing. So I guess before we go any further, I'll verify that everyone can hear me. Can someone just type a message if you can hear me? Perfect. All right, let's get started then. So I guess I'll start off by introducing myself and Anna. And thank you, Kevin. It's very fitting to work in the mushroom industry. I get that a lot. I also get homeless guy sometimes. So my name is Jeff LeBeau. I am the founder of a few companies in the psychedelic space. I've been deeply involved in the psychedelic mushroom space for several years now. I'm a lifelong mycophile. I've always had a huge interest in mushrooms and specifically in psilocybe mushrooms. So I'm the founder of Psilopedia, which is a website that focuses on strain and species categorization and just giving information on psychedelic mushrooms in general and other psychedelics. I'm also the founder of Spores Lab, which is the leading Canadian provider of magic mushroom genetics and a whole other range of mushroom species. I believe we have about 45 different mushroom species available. So yeah, that's a little bit more about me. Anna is a microdosing coach and is also the creator of Odin, the Microdosing Journal. She started her microdosing journey 3 years ago, and microdosing and macrodosing psychedelics has completely changed her life. So that's allowed her to shift from living a dull and uninspired life into a much more purposeful and heart-centered life. She believes that it is in everyone's birthright to enjoy a joyful and fulfilling life, and now she has dedicated her time to helping other people find that fulfillment. And throughout this event, we are going to have a few polls. And actually, I guess I should touch on how I'm related to Blue Goba. I have been in the psilocybin space for a while, and Blue Goba is one of the oldest dispensaries. So I've been in contact with them for quite a long time. To be completely honest, the owners of Blue Goba don't feel like it is the right time to put a face to the name. Just due to the nature of the business. So I am doing this as Jeff from Spores Lab, and Anna's here as well. Okay, so yeah, so we're going to have a couple polls throughout this event. We can actually start the first poll right now. So I will launch that right here. And yeah, go ahead and answer this poll here. It's going to be available for 1 minute. And the poll is, what's your experience with microdosing? So are you a beginner? Have you microdosed for quite a while? Did you try it and not like it? Or have you never tried it before? And it looks like so far most answers are the option 1, I'm a beginner. So that's perfect that you're here for this event. And a few people saying that they have tried it and it did not work. Maybe if the two or the couple people that have chosen that option, you want to send a comment. Just maybe elaborating on what maybe went wrong, what you didn't like about microdosing. And both Anna and I will be trying to keep up with the messages in the chat box throughout the event, and we will have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the event. But for me personally, I've been microdosing for a little over 4 years now. So I've played with quite a few different substances. I've tried microdosing mushrooms. I've tried microdosing LSD and mescaline. So there's definitely differences between the two, and in my opinion, there are certain substances that are better for certain applications, and we can get deeper into that later in the event. And just to respond to Sylvia, mescaline is another psychedelic or psychoactive substance. It is found in most famously the San Pedro cactus. Good question. Where can you get mescaline? There's actually not too many places that sell it right now. I do know one company called Dose Osmosis offers it. So Dan, you can look up Dose Osmosis. Okay, I'm going to close the poll here and we will move on. And just to share this again, this will be recorded and will be posted on YouTube, and will also be available on the Blue Goba website after the event is done. So for the results of the poll, it looks like most people that answered the poll were beginners. Again, that's perfect that you're here for the event. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. All right, so microdosing psychedelics, promise of a better life. So to begin with a definition of microdosing, a microdose is traditionally defined as a sub-perceptual dose of a hallucinogenic or psychedelic or psychoactive psychotropic substance. By sub-perceptual, that means that you don't feel any acute effects. So when you take a microdose, if you're taking a proper microdose, you shouldn't feel any acute effects. You shouldn't feel any different in the moment. But over the course of a couple of weeks, a couple of months, a lot of people do report several benefits. Some of those benefits would be an increase in creativity, an increase in your ability to focus, and an overall increase in your mood and just kind of life satisfaction in general. A microdose, so to kind of break it out into the different substances, it's typically defined as between 100 and 200 milligrams for psilocybin mushrooms, or anywhere between 10 and 20 UGs, micrograms, for LSD. And there's not really a solid definition for most of the other substances because the practice of microdosing is fairly new. And that leads well into the bit about history. The first kind of major study about microdosing was actually not quite even a study. It was fairly off the cuff, but it was done by a guy named James Fadiman in 2011. And Dr. Fadiman basically just sent out kind of a questionnaire slash instruction manual to quite a few people and asked them to procure their own substances and take a subperceptual amount and document what, how their day went, how their week went, how their month went, and the results were extremely promising. So he decided to look further into it, and subsequently he has published, I think, 5 or 6 studies on microdosing now. Just to touch on Dr. Fadiman a bit, he has been in the psychedelic space for a long time. I know the first study that he published was, I believe, in the late 1960s. He had been in contact with Albert Hofmann, who was the creator of LSD. That's actually where he got the idea for microdosing, because Hoffman had said that taking small amounts of LSD in specific subperceptual amounts, between 10 and 20 UGs, can have several mental health benefits. So that's a little bit of the history behind microdosing. There actually isn't too much concrete study or data that I can cite because the practice is fairly new, or at least research and quantifiable data about it is not quite available yet. That being said, there are several studies underway, and I was looking at actually a really interesting graph a couple of weeks ago that showed the amount of studies into psychedelics, and it was mapping it from, I believe, the late 1960s until now, and it showed an absolutely exponential increase around 2017. So, we can expect a lot more data to come out in the next couple of years regarding both macrodosing and microdosing, and regarding quite a few different substances as well. I know there's companies and scientists and universities studying ketamine, studying psilocybin mushrooms, LSD, mescaline, dimethyltryptamine. So basically every classical psychedelic. So the science behind microdosing. Is a little bit undetermined still, but we do know a fair bit about the science behind what happens in the brain when you take psilocybin, and that would, the kind of the 3 main changes that happen in the brain when you take psilocybin are: 1, the stimulation of neurogenesis, and that is the creation of new brain cells. Number 2 would be dampening of a network in the brain called the default mode network. And now overactivity in that network overactivity in the default mode network has been, sorry, I'm just going to catch up on the slides here. Okay, so default mode network, overactivity in the default mode network has been associated with a few mental health conditions, most notably depression and anxiety. So when you take psilocybin or any psychedelic that antagonizes the same receptors as psilocybin, you dampen activity in the default mode network. And then the third most kind of prominent neurological benefit to taking psychedelic substances is the incitement of cross communication between different brain networks. So brain networks that don't normally communicate in the sober state of mind are sharing information while you're under the influence of a psychedelic. And that is theorized to be why you often have novel, out of the box ideas during or shortly after a psychedelic experience. And yeah, to touch on studies briefly again, there is a lot of research going on right now, both at nonprofit institutions and universities, and then several studies done by actual corporations as well. So there's multiple companies in Canada that have licenses to grow and produce and extract psilocybin and a few other psychedelics. So there's There is kind of two sides to that. There's some of the psychedelic community that that thinks it should be less corporate, but I am actually of the opinion that that will expedite research and that will allow this plant medicine, or this medicine, it's not a plant, but this medicine to be accessed by the most amount of people in the shortest amount of time possible. So I believe it's a bit of a necessary evil. Okay, so on to the perceived benefits. So we talked a little bit about the actual, pharmacodynamics and the neurological benefits, but here some of the reported benefits, let's call them, or perceived benefits. The most prominent of those would be improved focus, connection to your feelings or others around you, your ideas. Reduced anxiety, obviously that's as a function of the dampening of the default mode network. Improved mood, reduced depression, again, that ties into the default mode network. Increased creativity, and that's theorized to be due to the cross communication between brain networks. Enhanced verbal expression, and then neurogenesis. And now, like anything else, there obviously are some risks to psychedelics. So some of the most prominent risks to microdosing and psychedelics in general, obviously, is their legal status. I believe that's going to change fairly soon, and I think we're seeing the beginning of that already. I think cannabis set an awesome precedent, and I believe that psilocybin mushrooms are, and psychedelics in general, are applicable to a much wider range of conditions than cannabis is. So I do believe that it will be expedited through legalization or decriminalization, both by the precedent set by cannabis and because it has more utility. And the utility that it has is showing, is being shown by preliminary studies to be a lot better than, or a lot more utility than current treatments. So as an example, current medications used to treat depression are generally called SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And the effectiveness rate of SSRIs is usually somewhere between 20 and 40%. So an SSRI will work well for 20 to 40% of the people that are taking them. However, some of the early studies looking at psilocybin in the treatment of depression are showing effectiveness rates between 70 and 80%. So it's a 2 to 3-fold increase, and that's been realized at all levels. Even bodies like the FDA, as an example, have given psilocybin, I believe it's called a breakthrough treatment status. So they're trying to expedite this through clinical trials because it's showing such a high effectiveness rate in comparison to the current treatment. But yes, further to the risks, there is also some research to show that if you have a history of mental illness, specifically schizophrenia, that you may be at a higher risk if you take psychedelics of I believe, catalyzing schizophrenia. So if you do have a history of mental illness, I would just recommend consulting with your doctor. And also, if you take an SSRI, I would recommend consulting with your doctor before trying microdosing or macrodosing or any psychedelic. Most doctors are pretty informed of the medical literature regarding psilocybin. So most of them are pretty open to psychedelic use. Another risk would be if you are pregnant. So again, I would just recommend consulting with your doctor if you're pregnant and you want to start microdosing. And then the final risk is possible anxiety. I've definitely heard some reports of people that take microdose and feel like it makes them more anxious. So I think that's just where we need to do more research and more study and hopefully we will be able to find out why it makes some people more anxious when they take a microdose. Now, when you are microdosing, so going back to the pharmacodynamics for a moment, when you take psilocybin, it takes your body approximately 2 to 3 days to completely metabolize all of the psilocybin. So there have been developed a few different microdosing protocols, and all of them recommend to take days off in between microdoses. The kind of two most prominent protocols would be the Fadiman protocol and the Stamets protocol. Now, Dr. Fadiman has kind of designed his protocol for optimal mental health treatment and optimal performance enhancement. Whereas Paul Stamets, who is another pretty big figure in the psychedelic space, has developed a slightly different protocol that is aimed at specifically at stimulating the maximum amount of neurogenesis. And then there are a few other protocols that we will get into here in the next slide. So the Fadiman protocol is quite simple. It's simply just take a microdose and then take 2 days off. And that allows all of the psilocybin to be metabolized and excreted from your body. It also allows the 5-HT receptors that psilocybin and psilocin bind with to be cleared. And then on the 4th day, you would take another microdose. So microdose, day off, and another microdose. And that is the Fadiman protocol. And one more thing I should mention actually is that Dr. Fadiman did design that protocol to be used with LSD. However, you could use it for LSD or mushrooms. The Stamets protocol is slightly different, slightly more involved, but it is basically take 4 days of microdosing consecutively, and then 2 days off, and then another 4 days on, and then 3 days off. Ooh, sorry, I did not mean to click there. And then 2 days on, and then a day off, and then 2 on, off, and then 1 on. And Stamets also recommends that you should mix your microdose with a few other substances in order to have a compounded effect. And I'm just being told that Stamets has actually revised this protocol a couple times. The one that I have heard in the past is the 4 day on, 2 day off, and the 4 day on, 3 day off the most. I haven't heard too much of this bottom one, yes, the 2 on, 1 off, 2 on, 1 off. That is actually fairly new to me, but I have heard quite a bit of, quite a few reports of people doing a 4 day on, 3 day off, or a 4 day on, 2 day off. Okay, I'm going backwards. Oh. My apologies for my technology illiteracy. Oh, God. Okay. And then another protocol would just be every second day. So day on, day off, day on, day off. Now, if you were to do that protocol, I would recommend taking a 2 to 3 day break, probably once a week or once every 2 weeks, just to fully clear your 5-HT or 5-hydroxytryptamine receptor group. And yeah, that's basically it for protocols. Obviously, since the whole kind of practice of microdosing is a little under 10 years old, we could see a completely new protocol be developed with a lot of this research that's coming out. But For a kind of recommendation for mushrooms, I would say use one of the two Stamets protocols, the 4 days on, 2 days off, or 4 days on, 3 days off. And for LSD, the Fadiman protocol would probably be ideal. And it is by no means just psilocybin mushrooms that people are microdosing with. There is a wide variety of psychedelic substances that people are using to microdose. A few of the most prominent ones would be ayahuasca, peyote, and that is mescaline. So mescaline is the active ingredient in peyote, just like psilocybin is the active ingredient in magic mushrooms. Ibogaine, ketamine, and LSD. And personally, I actually quite like LSD microdose. And as I briefly mentioned before, there are kind of different applications that you can use different microdoses for. And certain substances will be a little bit better suited, for me at least, to different applications. So as an example of that, I like to take LSD microdose if I have a really long work day. I feel like LSD makes me quite noticeably more productive and gives me a nice energy boost. Whereas if I was going to try and do something creative, or I had a day off and I wanted to go on a hike or something like that, mushrooms would be a little bit better suited to that for me. And again, to each their own, and it really is different for everyone. So I guess I would encourage people to do some experimenting and to try a few different substances in a few different dosages, and we'll get into that a little later in the event here. Right here, actually. Next slide. So the dictionary definition of a microdose is subperceptual. So you ideally should not feel any acute effects when you're microdosing, but you do get those neurological benefits that that are quantifiable, such as neurogenesis, dampening of the default mode network, and hypercommunication between different brain networks. How you should determine your threshold really is going to have to be done through a little bit of experimentation. And I am actually going to let Anna take over from here. So Anna will present the next section of the presentation. I just got to figure out how to get back to Zoom. There we go. Hey, Anna.
Hello, everyone. Can you see me?
I can.
I guess you have to stop sharing your screen.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Stop. Yeah.
How's everyone doing? Nice to have you all here. Thank you so much for joining. It's a very nice evening here in Vancouver, so thank you for taking the time. I will share my screen and I will dive right into finding your sweet spot, some practices that you can combine microdosing with, and some other good stuff. So, but before we start, I actually want to ask you guys something else. So I have another poll here that I would like to launch. Back. So I'm curious if you guys have found your sweet spot. So this means that if you found the right amount that really works for you. All right. Looks like most of you have not found your sweet spot. Okay, well, this is great because I have some good news. All right. Perfect. I will end the poll now. And back. Close. All right, so let me just share my screen. Okay. So I've seen in the chat that there has been quite a bit of debate of what is the amount for a microdose. Well, first of all, I do want to mention that a microdose is always subperceptual. So if you feel anything, any change in your perception, that means it's not a microdose. And some of you have asked, what's the point of a microdose? Because if you can't feel it, then how do you know it's working? And that's a good point. But the microdose idea comes from a pharmaceutical field, and it means that you take such a small amount that you don't necessarily feel it, perceive the effects. However, it does have a lot of physiological effects and neurological effects. So that's how a microdose should actually work as well. Whereas you don't feel it, you don't have change in your perception, you don't trip, you do allow your brain to rewire and reconnect and you know, get all the benefits of microdosing. So for me, when I started microdosing, I started with 100 micrograms of mushrooms. And that for me was too much. And the way I felt it was too much, it's because it made me very tired. It gave me a headache. It made my eyes feel very, very dry and red, as if I smoked cannabis all day, which was kind of weird. It made me super hungry, and it just didn't feel quite right. So I thought, you know, these were not the benefits that I was expecting from microdosing. So what happened? So I went back to, you know, reading people's stories about microdosing, and I've decided to try lowering my dose. And so I started lowering my dose into half. So I took only 50 milligrams, and that's where I actually felt a change in my mood. So it almost felt like a second cup of coffee without the jitters. The world around me felt amazing, felt exciting, and I was ready to take on the day. So there was a boost in energy and mood, but I didn't feel like, you know, colors were changing or shapes were shifting or anything like that. So that's how I would consider a microdose to feel. It's almost like working in the background, bringing up sometimes emotional things for you, but it allows you to navigate the space. So my suggestion when starting microdosing is start very low. Same with cannabis, right? You go slow and you start very low. And when I work with my clients, I found that a lot of people have a very low threshold. So even 50 milligrams can impact their day. So I have them start with 25 milligrams of psilocybin, and that is 0.025 grams. So I know the numbers can look very weird on paper. You think that you take 0.1 and that's 10 milligrams, when in fact that's 100 milligrams. So that's my suggestion. You start very low, and you take it one day, observe how you feel, take a 2-day break, just like with the Fadiman protocol, and then again you go into the 4th day, taking a higher dose and observe how that feels. So it's very hot in here because of Vancouver. So in the microdosing journal that I created, this was the tracking sheet that I had for finding my threshold. So basically, I would write down the date, the substance, and the dose, and then I would pay attention to all these things throughout the day to see how I felt. And as I said, I followed the Fadiman protocol to increase my dose. And once I reached 75 milligrams, I realized that it was a bit too much. So I started feeling a mild headache, and then I went back to the 50 milligrams. So that's how I found my sweet spot. So right now I am microdosing with 50 milligrams of mushrooms and 12 micrograms of LSD if I want to microdose with LSD. Okay, so if you want to get started today and you want to set yourself up for success, there are a few things you need to pay attention to. And I think that someone in the comment section did mention the fact that intention is the most important part, and I would have to agree. The way I start my microdosing in the morning, I meditate for 10 minutes because that really grounds me, and I do a body scan just to kind of see how my body feels. And then I take the microdose. And while I take the microdose, I kind of set the intention. The intention is not a goal that I have in mind. It's more so like an anchor that I use throughout the day. So say, for example, sometimes microdosing brought a lot of emotions that I wasn't expecting. And the intention I had for the day was just to stay open and go with the flow. And every time something unexpected happened and I felt like I was wanting to overreact, I went back to my intention, and I just reminded myself that, oh, I want to stay open. So that allowed me to stop myself from being reactive and just get curious about what showed up. And I wasn't really predicting, because I am a bit of a control freak. So you know how that goes. In terms of set and setting, when I microdose with LSD, I like it quite a lot because it does put me in that flow working headspace. And so I do notice that it's hard to make decisions while microdosed with LSD. However, if the space is set up in such a way that I know exactly what I'm working on, then it makes it a lot easier for me to just get into the work and finish things. So when I designed my website, for example, I knew exactly what the website should look like, the pages and the information, the images that went in there. And so I prepared everything before microdosing. I did my microdosing, and then I started working. And as I started working, just time flew by, and by the end of the day, I finished the website. So it was very easy for me to just go into the workflow and stay in there and finish things, because I didn't have to make any decisions. So that's one example of how you can set yourself up for success to really achieve the goal that you want. Now, there are a few things that do help when microdosing. And at the beginning, when I started microdosing, I found that systematic tracking was the thing that gave me a lot of personal insight. So I started tracking for the first 30 days, whether it was a day on or off. And I will actually show you, because I think I can. So this was the tracking sheet I used. On this sheet, I just mention whether it's a day on or off, the date, the substance, the dose, and the intention. And you can see that you don't have to rank your experience for like mood, energy, creativity every hour, but if you put it every 2 hours or every 3 hours, at the end of the day, you have a snapshot of how the day looked like. And when you gather data like that for 30 days, you can actually see how your mood changes on a microdose day versus on a non-microdose day. And you can see at the end if microdosing really helped. And you can make informed decisions based on your own psychology and physiology, whether to change your protocol, whether to include something else in your lifestyle, whether to add other things into your microdosing protocol. So I do like this approach because we are all different, and I do think that the microdosing experience should be personalized because we are all so different, right? Just if you pay attention to the dose itself, you realize that everyone's threshold is different. Other things that I think kind of came naturally into my life once I started microdosing. Like I used to drink a lot of wine at the end of the night, just a kind of a glass to take the edge off. And I'm not doing that anymore. And I feel like that is due to microdosing. The need to take the edge off was not there because at the end of the day, I felt so much more fulfilled, if that makes sense. I was also craving more healthier foods. I don't know if that's really due to microdosing, but I guess I'm happy. And then also going out a lot more and not staying inside the house and working 12 hours a day, because that's not quite healthy. So all those things did come naturally. And as soon as I incorporated them into my life, things really changed for me. All right, so, I mean, as you've probably noticed, there are a few stacks out there, and the most famous one is Stamets stacks for neurogenesis, where you can combine niacin, lion's mane, and psilocybin mushrooms just to really help with reconnecting new areas of your brain that normally are not, talking to each other. There are other, blends out there for energy, for focus, for mood, and for social, and those are all done based on data that comes from, like, say, for example, you have cordyceps. Everyone knows that cordyceps makes you more energetic. So people started making blends with psilocybin and cordyceps to bring that up for energy. So it's almost like you know the effects of these other herbs, and you can just combine them into different blends to get this these results. And people do like that. I'm not sure how much is placebo, how much not, but you can try it for yourself and see how it feels. Another thing that I've noticed is that you can microdose with different strains. And from my own experience, I've only macrodosed with different strains, and I do notice a difference. But yeah, if you have questions about different strains and different effects on you, I think Jeff could answer those. So that's that. And I guess now we are on to the Q&A session. So I will stop sharing my screen. Where are we? Yeah, and if you want to get in touch, I am on Microdosing Guru on Instagram. So I do post a lot about microdosing information there and stacking other psychedelics, because I do love those combinations. All right, there you are.
Am I back now?
Yes, I'm back. So let's see, do we have any questions?
I wanted to briefly touch on the stacking, the Stamets stack in specific, the lion's mane and psilocybin. When you take both of those, so both of those on their own have both been shown to stimulate the process of neurogenesis. And neurogenesis actually happens throughout the lifespan of the adult brain. However, when you take psilocybin mushrooms or when you take lion's mane mushrooms, it's increased. And when you take both of them at the same time, that effect is compounded. So it's increased even more when you take them together. And then Stamets has also added niacin B3 into that stack. And what niacin B3 does, twofold. Firstly, it helps the upregulation of a neurotransmitter called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And then secondly, it increases blood flow to the brain. So taking the niacin and lion's mane mushroom and psilocybin mushroom all in one pill is a really awesome idea. And I think Stamets is onto something there.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just catching up on the comments here. I do see that there are 4 questions in the Q&A section.
Okay.
What happened?
I'm not sure. I think you're the host now, Anna. So I believe you will have to do the Q&A. But or we could just scroll through it. And I've got it up here.
Okay, perfect. I only see one question from Dawn.
Okay,
Is it possible
well,
to
we'll start with Dan Connolly's.
Okay.
Is it possible to microdose on SSRIs? That's a really good question, Dan. To be honest, I would say you'd want to consult with your doctor and ask him specifically for the SSRI that you are on. Has there been any negative interaction with psychedelics? What do you know about its interaction with psychedelics? Because all of the SSRIs are a little bit different. And I do know that there are some of them that you can take simultaneously with psilocybin, but there are others that you should not take simultaneously. So just reach out to your doctor about that. And like I mentioned before, most doctors keep informed, on the research into psychedelics. If anyone is worried about broaching that subject with their doctor, I would say reach out to MAPS Canada or the Psychedelic Association, or pretty soon we will have a list on Psilopedia of psychedelic friendly doctors. So any of those organizations should be able to put you in contact with someone that can help you.
Nice.
And I guess the reasoning behind that is that when you take an SSRI, basically the function of the SSRI is to hold serotonin in the synaptic cleft between neurons. So when you take psilocybin, it's dephosphorylated into another compound called psilocin, and that psilocin molecule can bind with a serotonin receptor. But if you already have serotonin held in that receptor by the SSRI, you can run into a condition called serotonin toxicity. It's exceedingly rare, but just in the interest of safety, I would always recommend to talk to your doctor first.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to close that one then.
Where do I find psilocybin pills? I already got Lion's Mane. Well, I guess you're in the good place. We can share with all of you the links to Blue Goba.
I'll type it here.
Yeah.
So Blue Goba is one of the oldest dispensaries in Canada. It's been in operation since 2018, and it's cultivated several hundred awesome reviews, and they're really focused on quality and consistency above all else. So they're, in my opinion, yeah, they're the place to go.
Yeah, I do have to agree. And they also have microdosing LSD. Someone else is asking here.
Yes, yeah, they do have. They're starting to branch out into a few other psychedelic substances as well. And to the best of my knowledge, the talking that I've done with the people running Blue Goba, they are planning to continue expanding that. They would like to offer mescaline in the future, and they would like to offer other mushroom species other than Psilocybe cubensis.
Yeah.
Oh, and actually one question about blends here. Yeah, I would say reach out to them. If there's a blend that they don't have that you want, send them a message. They do have a couple blends available on there, but yeah, they're very responsive to messages. Do you want me to do the next question, Anna?
What's the next question? Let me see here.
Sherry.
Oh, where is it? I guess I don't have the same list as you do.
Oh, okay.
I have Sylvia, Anonymous, then Nico. So have there been any studies as to the effectiveness of these medicines regarding helping Alzheimer's dementia? Not to my knowledge, but if you know any.
Yes, there have been a few studies on Alzheimer's, no trials, but there have been a few preliminary studies, and it has shown to be effective in the treatment of Alzheimer's. For more information on that, I would just say look up in Google psilocybin and Alzheimer's. Unfortunately, I can't cite you the study, but I do definitely remember seeing a study about that. And sorry, what was the other condition? It was Alzheimer's and
dementia.
I'm not too sure about dementia, but I would actually recommend caution. I think dementia is sort of similar to schizophrenia in some regards. So if you do have dementia, I would definitely consult with your doctor before taking any psychedelics. So Sherry's question was, is it better to eat or make tea and strain? Go ahead.
Can I say, in my experience, tea is a very weak way of getting all the active substances from psilocybin mushrooms. So I would just ingest it. I would, just ingest it. And as much as you can on an empty stomach, you don't want to eat too heavily before.
One thing about tea, though, is that if you take psilocybin in liquid form, you will feel the effects slightly faster. So between like 15 minutes and 20 minutes faster when you would eat psilocybin mushrooms, it usually takes like 40 to 60 minutes before you feel any effects. If you were to take it in liquid form, that could be cut down to like 20 to 30 minutes. And then furthermore, you could shorten that period a little bit more, even make the kind of the come up of the experience happen even a little bit faster by adding citrus to your tea. And what citrus does is it starts the dephosphorylation process of psilocybin into psilocin. So your body can take that psilocin and bind it directly to the serotonin receptor instead of having to put it through your liver first and dephosphorylate the psilocybin.
Yeah.
But to wrap up and answer your question, either or, both will work. Kind of personal preference. The tea definitely tastes better, but you can mix with dried mushroom with other things too.
Well, someone here in the comment section, Dan, mentioned that he puts his in his coffee, and I have done that before, and I actually love it. You can even mix it with cocoa because the two actually go really well together.
And actually, I just saw a really interesting question from Daniel. There are slight differences between mushroom. Oh, okay. Sorry, I might have misunderstood your question a little bit here. But there are notable differences between a fresh mushroom and a dry mushroom. So if you were to freshly harvest a mushroom and eat it, there is going to be slightly higher levels of psychoactive compounds, and the ratios of psychoactive compounds are also going to be slightly different. You'll have a significantly higher psilocin ratio most of the time. But yeah, to answer your question, Daniel, I would say that at the same dosage, 200 milligrams in a pill or 200 milligrams of raw mushroom would be a very similar effect. That being said, if you were to try and use microdose pills to take a full dose, so if you were to take say 10 pills to make a 2 gram dose, 10 200 milligram pills, you might run into some issues just due to the rate of absorption, right? Because the pills have to break through that vegetarian capsule and then be absorbed. So I have heard reports of people having less of an experience than they thought they were going to have when they tried to use pills to take a macro dose. So if you would,
that explains my experience.
If you were to do that, I would recommend just emptying out the pills into a glass of water or a glass of orange juice if you want to try that citrus dephosphorylation technique. Do that to take your macro dose. But for the microdose, the consistent dosage of a pill works awesome. Oh yeah, lemon tech, yeah. That's the slang for it, lemon tech.
Yeah. What's the next question? Oh my God, so many questions and comments. I'm interested in trying LSD. I think we answered that.
And Malcolm in Toronto, you are correct that boiling water will reduce the potency. Heat, light, or oxygen degrade psilocybin. But if you boil your water and then just let it like stop boiling, but still be warm, and then just steep the tea in the hot water, the amount of psilocybin you lose will be fairly negligible.
Yeah. So Andy here is asking, he's like, I'm a big guy and found that 200 milligrams of the golden teacher works well every three days. Is that too high? I don't get buzzed, but the next few days feel a lot more spirited. No, I think that's a good spot for you. I think you got it right. So as I said, everyone's threshold will be different. So yeah.
And I think weight will have some effect on it, but probably less than you would think. I would say your individual neurochemistry would probably have as much or more of an effect as your weight. I mean, that being said, you know, someone that weighs twice as much as someone else is probably going to have to take a little bit more to get the same effect.
And Paul Ledger, you said that your microdosing felt like 2 cups of coffee. Should you be taking less because you should not feel any kind of high? Just wondering because I want to know how it should feel for me. It felt like 2 cups of coffee, not because I was high, but because I was excited. So coffee makes me excited about life. But if I drink too much, it gives me the jitters. So it just, it's almost like the world around me is brighter, not through colors, but I do see the opportunities around me, and I just get excited about the little things. So that's how I feel when I microdose. And it's mostly a mood booster for me, probably, yeah.
And for me, I feel a slight increase, you know, a positive increase in my overall mood. I'm just a little bit happier. You know, if I'm driving and, you know, some asshole cuts me off, I'm a little bit less pissed off. I feel like I can focus on things very well, and I feel like I have a little bit more creativity. And further to that, LSD microdosing, I really feel like I can focus and hone in on things. And I hear a lot of people using that in the tech space, in the programming world, using that, you know, to be able to program for hours and hours on end. So it's a common thread that microdosing LSD will increase your productivity.
Someone here is asking about, have you found any information or have any personal experience regarding DMT, microdosing DMT? So I know in UK, there was a study done on rats where they showed that it reduces anxiety and depression, mostly depression. And I think that those are promising results for anyone microdosing with DMT. I have microdosed DMT probably just 2 times. And I think it was more of a microdose, more than a microdose. So I think overall does have the same mood enhancement effect, but I can't really speak from my experience. And hopefully there is going to be a lot more studies coming up to kind of tell us if it's, you know, useful. I think it is though. Definitely. Just because they were studying the levels of DMT in brain, again in rats, and they realized that there is as much DMT in the brain as serotonin. So that kind of changes, you know, the way we think about what kind of neurotransmitters are in our brain and how their role in the way we perceive reality.
I've also looked at that study, and it's a really interesting one. It really goes to show how much, you know, humanity still has to learn about neurochemistry and the brain in general.
I mean, I think soon they will realize that there is an endogenous receptor system, just like with the cannabis, cannabis, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah. For a long time, there was debate on whether DMT was even endogenously produced by the brain. Now that's been confirmed. You know, now we're one step further, where it's being found in much higher levels than previously thought. Granted, this is for rats, not for humans. But yeah, and DMT is an extremely interesting substance. Yeah, it's. Well, it's a pretty cool experience too if you've never tried it. It's very short, but well, it depends on your method of ingestion. But if you are smoking or vaporizing it, it's a very short but very intense experience at macro dosage, obviously.
Yeah. I see here in the comment section, Paul is asking, does smoking cannabis interfere with microdosing on psilocybin? I would say yes. I think that cannabis enhances any drug that you've previously taken. So if you do DMT, if you do, I don't know, LSD or anything, micro or macro dose, you would probably get like a boost in the effects in a sense. So yeah, it does interfere in that sense. So if you want to stay with a microdose and not have a bigger effects, then probably you shouldn't smoke cannabis. Not until you're home and safe and relaxing
and for a full dosage, in my experience, and I've heard this reported from other people, and I've also read a few articles about this, one in specific on Double Blind Magazine, that says that smoking cannabis after taking a larger dose of psychedelics can be a potentiator for the experience. I definitely concur with that.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so Anonymous. I microdosed for 6 months, but stopped because my blood work showed a hyperthyroidism flare-up. I have an autoimmune condition which was under control with medication, but for some reason it was aggravated again. I'm wondering if microdose interacted with my medication. That's a good question. I do know that that taking psilocybin will raise your blood pressure and will raise your heart rate. So it definitely is possible that taking psilocybin mushrooms consistently for a period like that would have some effect on your overall blood pressure. But to be honest, I'd say that's probably a question that you'd have to ask a doctor. Do you have any input on that, Anna?
No.
Yeah.
Can you microdose ketamine? Dan Connolly is asking here. So yes, you can microdose ketamine. However, there is a dark side to ketamine. It does have an addictive tendency. So if you have an addictive personality, probably you want to slow down on ketamine. And it also affects your kidneys. So you want to make sure that you're not overdosing. And in frequent doses, it can also destroy some of your neurons. So ketamine is great, but you do have to be careful with how much and how long you're taking it for.
For sure. So Chad was asking about microdosing liquid LSD. Microdosing LSD in a liquid solution is actually exactly how I would recommend to do it, because most LSD tabs are sold in 100 microgram or 150 microgram increments, and it's hard to break off 1/10 of that and have an accurate dosage every time. So what you can do is you can mix an LSD tab with distilled water. And LSD is very stable in distilled water, so it'll last for several months, if not years. But all you have to do is mix it in with distilled water and let it sit for 48 hours, and then gently shake with the whatever container you have before you use it. And then you'll have a really good idea of an accurate dosage as well, right? Like if you can say, I put 100 UG tab in here and I put 10 mils of water, I know that every 1 mil of water is going to have 10 UGs.
Yeah. And going back on microdosing DMT, I do want to say on my website, you can find a full-on blog post on how to do it properly if you are interested. Yeah.
And one thing that I actually forgot to mention as well when you were talking about ketamine, and I was reminded of it when I was talking about LSD as well, is that LSD does have a little bit of addictive tendencies as well, and that is due to its action on the dopaminergic system. So mushrooms act on only the serotonergic system, so the 5-HT serotonin receptor group, Other substances like ketamine and LSD have action on that same serotonergic system, but they also give a dopamine release, and that's where the addictive properties come in.
Yeah. Somewhere in Daniel, my dad is 63 and depressed and on antidepressants. Could this help him at this age? Oh my God, I can't really read at this point. What could be the best approach? Well, first you need his approval. That's the first step in any, approach. And then I think that it could definitely help him. I mean,
and starting with a microdose would probably be a great way to kind of ease him into it. Perhaps even starting with just a lion's mane supplement. I know there's several studies out there showing that lion's mane is quite effective in treating Alzheimer's and stimulating neurogenesis. So maybe to just kind of like get him to test the water with a mushroom pill, right? That's just lion's mane, and see if he likes it, see if he notices himself getting a little bit sharper, and then introduce him to psilocybin. I know that's actually what I did for my grandmother, and she's 76 and she microdoses quite regularly now. But I started her off with lion's mane, and then I gave her a very small dosage. I believe I started her with a 50 milligram psilocybin microdose, and then now she's taking about 100 milligram microdose.
Yeah,
she really likes it. Wow. She's got her friends onto it now.
A success story. I love it. Someone here is asking where they can get lion's mane. I know that Blue Goba does have lion's mane as well. So
yeah, Blue Goba does have lion's mane capsules. Spores Lab has it as well. Spores Lab, we're actually really ramping up our lion's mane production. So we hope to be able to not only sell the lion's mane supplement capsules, but actually sell dried lion's mane in the next couple months. But if you're looking for it right now, I do know there is another site called Harmonic Arts that sells dried powdered lion's mane, if you were looking to make your own microdose capsules. Or if you wanted to buy a pre-made capsule, you could get it from Blue Goba or Spores Lab. Yeah. And I wanted to touch on Clinton's question before we get too far below it. The penis envy strain is the most effective strain for achieving individual sovereignty. Terence McKenna often stated that magic mushrooms are a boundary dissolving drug, and what he meant by that was that they free your mind. They remove the fetters that the system has placed on your mind, the limiting beliefs that indoctrinate people and keep them bound to a lower state of consciousness. Clinton, I 100% agree with you that penis envy is the most effective strain, and I'm also a huge fan of McKenna. So yeah, penis envy is the best.
Nice.
And interestingly, actually, Spores Lab has had a few genetics tested, and penis envy came back with the highest results. And not only the highest overall, but the highest psilocybin. There was a significantly higher ratio of psilocybin to psilocin in the penis envy strain. So I can't say why that makes the experience different, but the experience from penis envy is a distinctly different experience.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so let's go back. There's quite a few in the Q&A section as well. I want to kind of hit a couple of those and then maybe go back to the chats.
Yes, so psilocybin mushrooms are reported to treat cluster headaches. Do you have any insight on what's happening in the body to combat the headaches? I don't know what's happening, but I do know a friend that used to have like crushing migraines, yes. And she started microdosing and she doesn't have them anymore. And it's almost like a miracle. I don't know what happened. I don't have the explanation, but if you, Jeff, know?
You know what? I can't speak to the pharmacodynamics of why that works, but I have been in contact with the founder and director of an organization called Cluster Busters. So if you're interested in that, I would say reach out to Bob at Cluster Busters, and he should be able to answer all of your questions. Beth,
Sounds funny. The name.
Cluster Busters.
Yes.
And you know what? Cluster Busters is quite old. I believe that was founded in 2004, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, this Bob guy, he's been working with with a whole range of different kind of unconventional treatments to try and treat cluster headaches for a long time. And he reached out to me and he said, I've had the most good feedback from psilocybin mushrooms.
Nice.
Which is great to hear. Because apparently the cluster headaches are like absolutely debilitating, like as bad as childbirth. Apparently, I wouldn't know. Okay, so Beth, is there a minimum age that you'd recommend for or suggest for microdosing? I'd probably just say 19, the age of majority.
Yeah, that's the classic.
Maureen. I would caution anyone in drawing conclusions from research on psychedelics right now. It's been with very few human participants and mostly tested on rats and mice. Always check with your doctor first. That goes for the grandparents too. Maureen, that's excellent advice. I could not agree with you more. However, there are a few clinical trials that are in the final stages of the clinical trial. So we are, I think, very, very close to having some much more conclusive results on the effectiveness of psychedelics in treating depression, PTSD, and anxiety, at least for those three conditions.
Mm-hmm. In the question here, I'm just seeing Mark's question, and he's like, Anna, you mentioned 12 micrograms of LSD is your preferred dose. What does increasing the dose feel like, and what does decreasing it feel like? When I increased the microdose of LSD to 15, it felt like I couldn't make any decisions, and it actually felt harder to focus. So the 3 micrograms just broke my focus, like, basically. So yeah, decreasing, I've never tried lower than 12 micrograms. I just found that, and I stayed with it. So
for me, I'd say anywhere above 30 micrograms for LSD is where I will start to lose a little bit of focus and kind of get some threshold, like psychoactive effects. My ideal dosage for focus is probably around 20 UGs. But again, it's going to take a little bit of experimentation for you to figure out what your ideal dosage is. So I guess I'd just recommend that, if you're adjusting up, make sure it's on a day off. And if you're adjusting down, you should be fairly safe.
I see Anarchy here asking if we can see his posts. So he's saying that I've read that too, high dose of LSD, and you never need it again. Wonder if it's a one-time cure for PTSD, depression, anxiety. I'm not sure I've heard that.
Sorry, I'm trying to find this question. I have heard several reports of a single dose of a psychedelic substance having a transformative, effect on someone. I think that's actually been backed up by a few studies as well. One in particular out of Johns Hopkins University. But yeah, I would say that it's definitely possible to have a really meaningful and life-changing experience, or have long-lasting relief from a mental health condition with as little as 1 high dose of a psychedelic.
Actually, James Fadiman was talking about, so it correlates. The higher the mystical experience, the higher the transformation you'll have in your life. So you will, get rid of addiction, you'll change your habits, and you'll change your lifestyle. So yeah, if you probably take a a high dose of any psychedelic and you have a, out of this world experience, when you come back, the likelihood of you being a changed person is way higher.
Katrina in the chats asked a question that I've heard asked a few times, just in my personal life, and so her question is, if I'm experiencing come up anxiety, does that mean I'm taking too much for a microdose? I would say certainly yes. I've heard that same thing reported from a few people, that they get anxious for the first little bit after taking the microdose. And in every case, it's been that their dosage has been a little bit too high. So I would say just try adjusting down and see what happens. And I think you'll probably like the results.
Yeah. However, for macrodose, the come up anxiety is normal and that will happen. You just have to ride it.
Yeah. I do experience a lot less of that when I am eating fresh mushrooms versus dried mushrooms. So I guess not everyone has the access to fresh mushrooms. But go ahead.
If you grow your own, then yes.
If you buy a grow kit from Spores Lab, then you'll be able to see the difference between fresh mushrooms and dried mushrooms. But actually, just while we're on this topic, I have seen a lot of papers come out lately about lyophilization, which is freeze drying. And now, if mushrooms are freeze dried, they retain the chemical composition of the fresh mushroom, and they retain that different ratio between psilocybin and psilocin and the other psychoactive compounds. So kind of the closest you could get to a fresh mushroom without actually growing them yourselves would be buying freeze-dried mushrooms. And I know Blue Goba offers that. I think a few other sites are starting to offer that as well. That's the technical word for it is lyophilized, but the layman's term is freeze-dried. But they also taste a lot better too. And likewise with fresh mushrooms, they taste much better.
I do have to try that. Mark here in the Q&A section is saying that on macrodoses of mushrooms, I had a very uncomfortable feeling in my gut. I later read that this was due to serotonin production in the gut being much higher than the brain. What's a way to counteract this? I would say that that's part of the come up anxiety and you can counteract it. Maybe try the lemon tech and that will attenuate that. But what's your take on that?
Yeah, I would agree. I would say try lemon tech. And I mean, moreover, where I don't want to ask you where you got the mushrooms from, but in my experience, I've only ever really eaten mushrooms that I've grown or that I've bought from reputable sources, and I've never experienced any of that indigestion. And in the process of growing mushrooms for several years, I've seen all other types of fungi and mold and bacteria. So I'd say that there's a decent chance that there was something else growing on the mushroom, and that's what caused the indigestion. So yeah, I mean, if your mushroom looks really nasty and discolored, yeah, that could be why you're experiencing indigestion.
Yeah. Clinton is saying that I'd love to join the conversation to share a spiritual perspective on this or future streams if you have me. We are going to have future events. Do we want to have people over right now, or we can do that in future events?
Well, let's schedule that for the future. But yeah, I mean, Clinton, we would love to have you on as a panelist. And I know, yeah. Clinton has a YouTube channel as well. Maybe Clinton, just drop your channel in the chat here, and anyone that's interested in learning more about psychedelics and kind of hearing about some of Clinton's experiences. He's done quite a few high dose experiences, and he does a really good job at kind of explaining the psychedelics experience, which is something that's very hard to do.
Okay, amazing. I'd love to share experiences with him because I love high doses and I like stacking psychedelics. And that's a whole new ball game. So yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So maybe we can make a whole event out of that about just, yeah, just sharing experiences.
I'd love to. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I know there's a few questions we missed in here. If I take an SSRI, which is supposed to dull the effects typically, I trip very easily. I'm very sensitive. Any guesses why? I also tend to like the less psychedelic strains, so I've been taking about 250 milligrams, but that is way too high for me not to trip at least a little bit. If I split open the pills and half them, that would that work okay? Yeah, so splitting the pill in half and dissolving it in water or juice would work excellently. And that's exactly what I would recommend doing. But I know there are several different options of pills available on most websites. You know, they should have something in the 100 milligram range, something in the 200 milligram range. And I actually know that Blue Goba has the Neurostack as well, which is only 50 milligrams of psilocybin.
So
yeah, I would say, you know, just experiment with taking a lower dose, you know, especially if you feel like you're extra sensitive. If you take an SSRI, I don't think that is having any effect on why you are more sensitive. I would say that, you know, you'd be more sensitive to psychedelics whether or not you are on the SSRI.
Yeah. So we just have a couple of minutes here. I'm thinking if anyone wants to get in touch with us, how would they do it? Should they just go on the website, Spores Lab and my own, or in Blue Goba? Should I just type them all in there?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, like Spores. So my company, Spores Lab, employs 2 people full time for customer service. So we're a team of 7 people. And you know, like almost half, or you know, a third of our workforce is like 100% dedicated to answering customer emails. So yeah, if you have any questions about growing, you know, I guess any questions about mushrooms in general, feel free to reach out to Spores Lab. You know, I know Blue Goba is awesome for customer service as well. If you look at some of their reviews on their website, it's apparent that they have pretty amazing service. And then Anna as well. I always see her on Instagram. She always messages me back right away, so she's on it.
Oh, I didn't know we were talking on Instagram, but now I know.
Yeah, no. If you have any questions about anything we're covering here, or you know, anything to do with psychedelics in general, don't hesitate to send any of those 3 websites or social media platforms, social media accounts a message.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, sorry. Hashil is asking a question about the grow kits on Spores Lab. Hashil, if you're referring to the ready to fruit grow kit, that one's going to be out of stock for about the next month. We were having some issues shipping those, and basically a pretty significant portion of the ones we shipped out were coming back, or were arriving damaged. You know, just getting Ace Ventura as the delivery man, it seemed like. That they'd arrive with the substrate all over the place in that little container. But the master culture mushroom grow kit will be back in stock in the next 2 or 3 days here. And that's kind of the one I would recommend anyway. That's what's going to get you the best bang for your buck is the master culture grow kit instead of the ready to fruit grow kit. The master culture kit is a little bit more involved. You've got to do one more step, but it's totally feasible for anyone to use that kit. And Ian, I'm glad to hear that that our strains look like the product photos. Oh, and Anna as well. Here, I'll type the links in. I'll just do the https:// in front of it, so it's a hyperlink.
Oh, I just did.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, for Blue Goba, Spores Lab, and
Microdosing. If you put https://, then someone can just click on it and go right to the website.
Okay.
I'll just do it for Microdosing. Lionfish, hoping for a little word on bedtime microdosing. To each their own. I've heard a few reports of people having their sleep disrupted by microdosing later in the day. But I've also seen a couple messages just in this chat here of people saying that they like to microdose later at night. So I'd say that's something that you should probably just do a little bit of experimenting with, and see if you like it better in the morning or better at night. I guess the substance will probably have some effect on that as well. I would probably recommend away from taking an LSD microdose later at night, because it does seem like, for most people, it gives you a boost of energy. But mushrooms at night, may very well work for you.
Yeah, it's strange because I've tried microdosing later in the day and it stimulated me. So I think that, but I've heard people say that they take it in the evening just to sleep better. So I guess it does have to do something with the chemistry, the neurochemistry in your brain. And so you just have to test it for yourself.
Yeah. One more from, I'm just scrolling back through all the questions here from Anonymous. From the Blue Goba website, what's recommended microdose to start with as a beginner? I would recommend the Golden Teacher 100 milligram or the multi-mushroom microdose. Those are both a pretty good starting point that's around the 100 milligram range. And then the multi-mushroom microdose has a bunch of other medicinal mushrooms in there as well. It's got lion's mane, chaga, reishi, turkey tail, shiitake, maitake, cordyceps, I believe. So you get a bunch of physical health benefits to go along with the neurological benefits of psilocybin.
Yeah.
And
all right. Well,
Anarchy Tech Stuff is requesting that everyone subscribe to his YouTube channel. So check out Tech Stuff and Clinton Nabis on YouTube.
Nice. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Looks like this was a success, so we are definitely going to have another one in the future, near future.
Awesome. And okay, one last question from Daniel. I just want to answer this one because I have a funny story to share.
Okay.
But the question was, can our pets benefit from mushrooms? I don't know about benefit, but I do know a friend who has a wiener dog, that this wiener dog got into some mushroom chocolate. So, chocolate, bad for dogs to begin with, but mushroom chocolate. And this wiener dog ate 10 grams of mushroom chocolate. And it survived. It survived. It had to go to the vet and get its stomach pumped. But not only did it survive, it could understand what the humans were saying, and it probably met God.
Now you see the evolution of dogs into more advanced species. Because I think that will happen with humans.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine, right? Like the weight to dosage ratio, that would be like eating like several hundred grams.
Oh my God.
As for a human.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's good that he survived. Leroy survived. So.
Yeah, Clinton is saying that wild animals have been tripping for years, and I do know that demons at North Pole, they do trip on Amanita muscaria. So yes. Right,
you're right. Yeah, the reindeer like eating Amanita. Jaguars will eat hallucinogenic vine. There's quite a few different species, that will seek out psychedelic substances. And
I think dolphins, they use the puffer fish to get high, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's all sorts of different species that enjoy altering their consciousness.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I think that is about it for me today.
Yeah, like it. Thank you everyone
for tuning in. And yeah, I think we're gonna try and do some sort of event, some sort of webinar about once a month from now on. So if you have ideas on what the topic could be, drop us a message at Spores Lab or Microdosing Guru or Blue Goba.
even through Eventbrite, I think that because I'm getting all the messages through Eventbrite. So yeah.
Okay,
that
cool.
also
Yeah,
works.
so if you have ideas for the next one, feel free to reach out. As always, if you have any questions about anything, feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
All right.
Okay, let me see, how do I